Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, Season 4, in Seattle. Let's watch.
In this moment, this whole relationship with Jackie is very bleak. The other night, she said that I needed to boss up. The way that she made me feel in that moment, when she said that I wasn't a man.
Eesh. Okay, we don't know what happened. It was off camera. But he said the relationship is bleak, and she told him in the midst of a conflict that he needs to man up and that he's not much of a man. I've talked about this already, about toxic masculinity and positive masculinity, neutral masculinity, and how he exhibits positive masculinity. And this idea that if he doesn't exhibit toxic, who knows? I don't know what the conversation was, but I don't know. Anytime you're telling someone to nut up or be a man or you're not a real man, you're probably engaging in toxic masculine notions, because those are often said in context of, well, I don't know, I guess I haven't really thought about it, but off the top of my head, I just can't imagine someone saying you're not a real man when you're being positive, right? I guess there's a weird world where if you were holding back tears and you were being emotionally unaware, someone could say, you're not being a real man. A real man would actually cry. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. This is concerning.
The other night, she said that I needed to boss up. The way that she made me feel.
Oh, he needed to boss up. Erase everything I said. So she said you needed to boss up, and then he says, the way she made me feel. Okay, so I take back everything I said. She did. He's not saying that she said you're not a real man. He said it felt that way to me.
In that moment, when she said that I wasn't a man, I wasn't doing grown man stuff. That hurts because I truly, genuinely do love this girl. So I left. I was staying at my apartment. I'm very self-aware that in that moment I could have blown up, but I did not. I needed time.
Okay, so we're learning that he moved out temporarily, which, you know, I could see be hard. You're going through conflict with someone that you don't know that well, and you're living with them in a small place. So, okay. This doesn't bode well, though. Usually if we're seeing this kind of thing, although we did see Danielle and Nick have huge fights, and they said yes, yes. They ended up getting divorced. But yeah, this isn't a great sign, but who knows?
We're here, and I don't know where we stand. You're packing your stuff?
Yeah.
For what reason?
I'm not about to play this game with you.
What game are we playing?
You didn't want to sit here and talk. You're like, I'm leaving.
What else am I supposed to do?
All right, so we could use this as a jumping off point. It depends on what you want, and I don't know what he wants. I don't know what she wants. But if you want to actually try to set things right and resolve the conflict and have a good relationship, then you have to try. You got to put effort. You got to take that leap. The analogy that I remember using early in my career with a couple was that I would see various couples do this, where they would be in a situation like this where they're both hurt. They're both scared. They're both feeling upset about what the other person did. You know how it is when you get in a fight with your partner or friend, and in those initial hours, you just ruminate on all the reasons why you're right and all the reasons why the other person is wrong. And you just can't figure out why your partner did that. It's just like, well, they must not care. They must not have empathy. They must not love me, or something like that. And sometimes that's true, I suppose, but usually in the scenarios that I'm thinking of, it's not. So you're really ruminating, and it's impossible to differentiate in that moment and actually see the bigger picture and to recognize what you did to contribute to it, and that there was a back and forth. Blame might be absolutely applied to your partner, but probably to you too. I don't know about the two of them. So you want to try to get to a place where at the very least you have a question mark as to whether or not your perspective and your narrative is accurate. It usually is not accurate. It's usually quite distorted. And if you can't do that, then you might want to wait before you actually engage with the other person and or seek therapists to help you. Then once you do engage, there's a way to open it up. There's a way to respond to the other person. So you could argue that he initiated it by going back. He was the one who left. So there's that. So anyway, the first thing he says to her is, so you're packing up your stuff to leave? Another way he could have opened it would just be like, hey, Jackie, I don't know what happened the other day, but I'm dedicated to try to resolve this. I can't figure out how we got in the fight. I have my ideas, but I'm sure I'm biased for myself. And I love you and I want to work on this. Would you like to talk? Okay. Now then she would have to reciprocate, right? Or just something along those lines. Or, hey, could we just hug for a second? I miss you. Or, hey, I'm sorry that I left last night. I was really upset. I'm guessing that was really hurtful. And maybe it was. That can be very, very hurtful to someone, particularly if they have traumas about abandonment or something. But it's hurtful. It's like, oh, you're done. You're just going to leave. You're just going to abandon me. You're breaking up with me, I guess. Is that what's happening? Who knows how Jackie felt. But so there's different ways to open. She could have also opened. She could have said, when he says, so you packing up your stuff to leave, she could have said, well, yeah, there's a part of me that wants to, but I would like to talk and see if we can resolve this. I don't have a lot of faith, but I'd like to talk, and maybe there's a path through this. I don't know. But they didn't do that. So every step of the way, there's a slight escalation. He says, so you're packing up your stuff to leave. And then she responds with, well, let's rewind this.
Where we stand. You're packing your stuff?
Yeah.
For what reason?
I'm not about to play this game for sure.
What game are we playing?
So he says, you're packing your stuff. And she says, yeah. He says, for what reason? He's not being combative, really, but he's not helping necessarily. She's escalating, I think, faster than he is. Maybe he deserves it. I don't know. But she's not giving eye contact. He's looking at her. She's just dismissing him. And then she says, yeah, packing my stuff. And he says, what are you, why? And she says, I'm not going to play games with you. And so then he says, what game are we playing? And that's each step of the way, it just gets worse and worse. And all the big fights or medium fights that you've had with your partner that didn't go well, they started out like this, where it's kind of innocuous. There are many opportunities for either or both to actually head down a constructive road, but both did not. Each step of the way, you might feel justified. He might feel justified. It's like, hey, all I did was ask her why she was packing. And then she could say, hey, all I did was say, yeah, I'm packing my stuff. And then he was like, why am I packing? And I'm like, you know why I'm packing. I'm not going to play these games with you. Everyone feels logical, but it's in a direction, at the very least, that's not constructive and possibly escalation, right? And then once you fast forward, maybe even just a few minutes, you're screaming at each other and yelling at each other and calling each other names and saying, I don't want to be with you anymore. And then the narrative afterwards is, my partner is a narcissist, is what you'll hear online. My partner is a psychopath. But in all likelihood, that's not the case. It was just moves that you made in the beginning that didn't give an opportunity for construction and for resolution to happen. And of course, you want to seek a couple therapists to help you with this if you need to, but I'm worried about how things are going already.
You didn't want to sit here and talk. You're like, I'm leaving.
What else am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do?
Okay, there's another way she could have said that. Now, he could, there's so many opportunities, and this is very easy to work on in couple therapy. This is just like the easiest session of all time, what I'm seeing right now. It's so easy to help people to figure out where the sentence will enter your mind of like, okay, this is what I want to say. And she's also kind of raising her voice. I don't know if that's accurate, and then he starts to raise his voice. It's not screaming, it's not necessarily yelling, but it's not a calm, collected tone, right? And maybe she's justified because we didn't see what happened. We don't know. There's a big question mark there. But anyway, she is saying, you're the one that left last night, right? So another way to put that, so if I were there, I'd be like, okay, so before you respond, Marshall, Jackie, I want to talk with you for a second. So you just said, you're the one that left last night. Let's talk about all that's behind that statement. When he left, how did you feel? And then hopefully we'd get to a place where in all likelihood she would say, it hurt me, it hurt my feelings, it felt bad, it felt like he was just throwing me away, he was rejecting me, just like everyone else does in my life, or whatever it is that she said. And then I'd say, okay, so That's the foundation of this, is that when he left, it hurt you. The response you're going to get from Marshall, I'm quite sure of it, given his demeanor and his behavior such, so far, would be very different if she focused on that. When you left last night, it really hurt. It was really, really hurtful. And I was scared. And I felt like you were treating me badly. It hurt my feelings. I'm pretty sure he would say, yeah, I could see that. I'm sorry. He might give an excuse or something, but at least there'd be a little bit there. It's a totally different thing, right? The situation's the same, the emotions are the same, but what you focus on in your mind and in your soul and what comes out of your face is completely different, right? She could say, you left me last night and God damn it, I'm not going to take that shit and I'm done with you. Okay, that's one statement, comes from the same place. When he left, it hurt and it scared me. Whereas another statement is, when you left, it hurt and it scared me. Now, to say the more vulnerable thing, you have to, one, have that modeled to you, and you have to have that awareness of yourself and the time to think about it and the safety to express it. And you have to trust that the other person isn't going to take advantage of your vulnerability to hurt you more. That's the worry. When we're hurt, we don't want to get hurt again, so we yell because it's less vulnerable to, it's quote unquote more safe to yell or to accuse or to avoid and be destructive than it is to be healthy and vulnerable. So it's hard. And so she says that, and let's rewind.
For what reason?
I'm not about to play this game with you.
What game are we playing?
You didn't want to sit here and talk. You're like, I'm leaving.
What else am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do? Sit in my feelings and sleep next to someone who said that I was not...
And then he responds with an escalation as well. What else am I supposed to do? Sit here with my feelings and sleep next to someone that we just had this huge fight? And there's a debate there. It's not a scientific fact that he had to leave. Might it have been for the best? I don't know. So there are two sides when she is at that point where she's coming from a place of hurt. She can be constructive and give him the opportunity to rise to the occasion and head down a constructive road by saying what I was saying last night, when you left, it hurt me. The other thing that can happen is that she can say what she said, which isn't awful, but it's not in a constructive zone. And he could read between the lines. He could actually see between the lines. She's not just saying, you're the one that left last night, therefore I get to leave right now, or I'm going to write you off because you left last night, or you left last night because you're a jerk face or something. But he could read between the lines and say like, oh, she's probably hurt. She probably was very hurt that I left last night. She's not saying that directly, but I see evidence of it in what she's bringing up right now. So I might focus on that, or at least be aware of that, instead of narrativizing or conceptualizing what's happening right now as some sort of tit for tat where we're trying to win, which is often where people go, which is never constructive. I will read between the lines and I will see the hurt and go from there. One, I won't take what she's raising her voice and she seems to be accusing me of something. I won't take it that way because I think she's just really scared and hurt, and maybe you think that's ridiculous. You're like, why would you be scared and hurt? You basically forced me to leave last night, or whatever it was. But at the very least, you know where it's coming from. And you might even attend to that. You might even say something, if you're Marshall, and say like, yeah, well, I imagine that really hurt you. If I were in your shoes, it would have really bothered me. And I don't know, I just didn't know what else to do. So either person, the first person can actually be aware and communicate their hurt in a non-accusatory, vulnerable way, tentative way, non-hostile way, or the other person can interpret the primary emotions of hurt and fear behind a non-constructive communication and note that and or attend to it to get people out of this track, because as they're on this track, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse in all likelihood, unless someone gets them off the track.
You didn't want to sit here and talk. You're like, I'm leaving.
What else am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do? Sit in my feelings and sleep next to someone who said that I was not man enough for them?
I never said you weren't man enough for me. I just said to be more aggressive. We don't have sex, bro.
Oh. What? Okay. Okay. That's what the fight was about? So, okay. Well, everything still stands. There's all the things I said are still in play, but I guess I hadn't contemplated what the fight was about. But if I had, that would not have been at the top of the list. But of course, I wasn't there. Okay, so we're learning that they don't have sex, and she was wanting him to be more aggressive. And then he said she basically was communicating to him in a way that made him feel like she thought he wasn't a real man, or I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities there.
We don't have sex.
That's on my account.
I'm just saying, do something. Try and get me in the mood or something.
We're getting a little bit more detail. What it sounds like is the two of them are either not feeling it or they're waiting for the other person to initiate. That's what it sounds like to me. That for her, she wants him to pursue and to initiate, which is fine. And he either isn't feeling it or is waiting for some indication, or literally for her to initiate. There's nothing wrong with that either. It would make sense that there'd be awkwardness about it because they don't know each other that well, especially if they don't start off with a lot of chemistry. Because I think some of the other couples, they start off with a lot of physical chemistry, and they just gel really easily. Who knows? There could have been a lot of issues here. But anyway, so we're hearing that she wants him. Let's rewind that.
What else am I supposed to do? What else am I supposed to do? Sit in my feelings and sleep next to someone who said that I was not man enough for them?
I never said you weren't man enough for me.
And it does point to a possibility that for him, he has traumas about toxic masculinity, that he's been accused of not being a real man or something, or he might have some paranoias about the sort of men that have dated Jackie before or something. I don't know. There's also a possibility that she was very much implying that she didn't think he was man enough or something. There are a lot of ideas about this, and of course some of it might be biological in nature, but we know that definitely culture plays a role in gender and masculinity, femininity, toxic versions of both, positive versions of both, but also sexuality, right? And some people, they want to be pursued. They don't want to be the pursuer. And it's important to have those conversations. So if I could rewind the clock for them, I'd be like, you might want to talk about your sexual expectations for each other, what you're looking for, who's going to initiate, what sort of, so then she says, I'm wanting you to get me into the mood. Okay, so that could be, there's a spectrum here. From one side of, she's just asking something that's healthy. She's just like, you're not romantic, or you don't approach me the way that I want you to approach me, or you don't touch me the way that I want you to touch me. And maybe she was trying to be nice about it or something like that. The other end of the dimension, the spectrum, is that she is saying, I need you to do all the work. Now, there's a lot of zone in between that, right? But at this end of the zone, she's saying, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to put in any work to it. It's your responsibility, whether she just wants her partners or she thinks it's the male responsibility to be the aggressor, to be the initiator, and to not have any insecurities about it, to not have any concern about whether or not the other person wants to have sex with him or not, that kind of thing. I don't know where we're at in that. We haven't heard anything. I want to think Jackie would be on this side where she's just like, look, I'm just looking for a little bit of romance, a little bit of energy from you. And when we go to bed and I think maybe we'll have sex, I just get the sense that you think we're friends or that we're just an old couple and you just look at your phone and roll over. I don't know. It just doesn't make me feel like you're attracted to me, and I want that. Now, that zone doesn't mean that she gets her way necessarily. It just means that it's in a regular kind of relatable zone to me anyway. It's important to have these conversations is my point. So they are talking about it now, which is good. So maybe they're heading into a constructive conversation where they're actually talking about what they want with sex with each other.
Said you weren't man enough for me. I just said to be more aggressive. We don't have sex, bro. We don't have sex.
That's on my account.
I'm just saying, do something. Try and get me in the mood or something.
I have been nothing but down for you.
Marshall, you're gonna give me a migraine because you're irking the shit out of me.
So, who knows? Maybe she has tremendous distress. Maybe a migraine is coming on. But this is what we call stonewalling. If you know about John Gottman, then you know this. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, that he called it, him and his colleagues, they said that there are 4 signs of the apocalypse, meaning there are 4 signs of divorce is coming. And they actually studied couples. They would watch them talk about conflicts or just interacting, and they would code all the behaviors in the lab. And then they would track them over time and find out if they got divorced years later. And those that ended up in divorce showed that they had at least some, if not all, of the 4 signs of the apocalypse or signs of impending divorce. And one of those, and it's perhaps, I think according to research, the most sure sign that divorce or breakup is in the future is stonewalling. It's where someone just says, I'm done talking to you. They might say that to you. They might just walk away. They might change the subject. They might shut down. They might become silent. They might hang up on you or whatever. We're done talking is the thing. And on one hand, you would say, well, that's a jerk face. But typically the stonewallers are very distressed. That was another thing that John Gottman and colleagues here in Seattle did in the lab is when they would, because there were various different studies over many years, and a series of the studies involved hooking up everyone to these monitors of stress, your heart rate, your sweat level, your cortisol. And they found that of the people that were stonewalling, whether they knew it or not, because not everyone is aware of their emotions, and whether they expressed it or not, they were experiencing high distress. They were very, very stressed out. Their body was freaking out. They were having a massive fight or flight reaction. They were very upset physically and emotionally, and they would stonewall because it's too much for them. They don't know what to do. So we try to help people with this by not saying don't stonewall, because it's hard to know what to do. Because for a lot of people who stonewall, they're like, if I don't stonewall, I don't know, I might get violent, something horrible, or I might say stuff that would be some of the worst stuff I would ever say. So I need to, they wouldn't say stonewall, I need to separate, Now, there's nothing wrong with separating. You could say, hey, I need a break. Like she could have said that. She'd be like, okay, I'm starting to freak out. I just need like 5 minutes, because that was exhibited by her in a previous episode where she actually did say, I just need you, you're kind of making it worse. Could you just leave me alone for a second? And that was differentiated. And I think that helps her just to kind of reset and have some time to think and have some space where people aren't bothering her. And who knows, speculation, given the little bit we know about her issues and her trauma and her stress, is that she's taking care of people. And so taking a break for herself might actually not be common to her. And so for her, her whole life, I've worked with couples and individuals that have this, where one person has a lot of enmeshment in their history, and they just feel, these individuals, depending if they were traumatized by that invasiveness or over responsibility or something, that they're in a constant state of just trying to get alone. They're just in a constant state of just like, I just want people to leave me alone. And at the same time, they want to be in relationships. The individual wants to be attached, and they might even have impulses to enmesh with other people, maybe even their spouse. So they're of two directions. On one hand, of course, they want attachments and they want closeness, and they might also have the influence and the modeling for their parents that they want to enmesh, over-invade, or be over-invaded. But on the other hand, they're in a constant state of just like, I want to be left alone. And so for these people, it might be helpful for them to get alone sometimes. And maybe I could see her being like that, given the little bit we learned about her situation. Anyway, so she stonewalled, and when that happens, it really throws a wrench in the relationship and in obviously the conflict resolution, because what is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to like beg her to please talk about this? It also communicates to him that it's not worth it to her. She doesn't care. It'd be like if you're in public and someone is arguing with you and you don't have a relationship with that person, you're just like, look, I'm done. I'm just going to go home and, you can fuck off or whatever. It feels like that. It feels like, so it doesn't matter to you. In all likelihood, it does matter to her, and she's very, very stressed out. Now, I could also see a scenario where they had a fight and she's had overnight to think about it, and she's like, you know what, this is stupid. We just met and we're already fighting, and I'm done. I could see that. I could see that being a conclusion. And so she's stonewalling because of that, and she doesn't really care about the relationship. But it's important to know. So if you stonewall, you might not know you stonewall. But it's okay to get alone. It's okay to separate. Sometimes actually that's the best thing to do. Sometimes it's wonderful. If you remember listening to the audio fights between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, they would actually talk about that, because I think in their couple therapy they were recommended that Johnny Depp wanted at times to separate, and when they were really escalating in their verbal confrontations, and it seemed like they had been talked to by a therapist or something that was functional. But the key is that if you are going to separate, do your best to actually tell your partner, if you care to, that you'll be back. You're just like, I love you. I need a break. I want to talk about this some more, but if we continue talking, I'm like at an 8 or 9 right now, and if I become a 10, I'm not going to be very functional, and it's going to stress me out, and 2, I might even be hurtful to you in a way that doesn't make any sense and would be unfair to you. So just give me like a half an hour to reset. Now, if you are the pursuer in a situation like that, you got to do your best to handle that and to differentiate. You might have relational traumas about betrayal and abandonment. You got to go to therapy for that and also be aware of that and not be undifferentiated with that and just assume that because they want to separate for a half an hour, that means that abandonment is going to happen. It could feel that way, but isn't that right? So anyway, we're seeing, I think, a good example of stonewalling.
All right, well, that is for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.